How's the day going so far?
Been good. It's good. Yeah, good attendance and a lot of good feedback. We have 8 people waiting. No, it lets them in automatically. Wanted to make sure that was the case.
Just get my caffeine intake here.
Yep. Right here in just a second. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Rex Galbraith. I'm on the sales leadership team here at Consensus. Welcome to this session of ConsensusCON, where we're going to be discussing getting a seat at the table by starting a buyer enablement division with Todd Jansen, who is the Global VP of Q Branch over at Salesforce. And really quick, ConsensusCON is focused on helping our customers and future customers scale pre-sales by getting the most out of Consensus demo automation. Our presenter lineup includes some of our top accounts as well as industry experts. So for those who are here, just so I can make sure that the audio is working, could you raise your hand? Okay, perfect. And then one more time, if you put those down, one more time, if you can see the visual, the slide. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So again, you're probably hearing this for multiple times, but we just want to recap it in case this is the first session you're listening to. We're happy to announce our newly created forum to continue to help build our user community and give you a space to communicate with one another, discuss best practices, and much more. We will also be starting a monthly webinar series beginning in December to continue to provide resources for our user base. We are recording this session and they will be made available for those who weren't able to attend or who would like to revisit the session. There will be a Q&A session after the presentation is finished. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section and they will be addressed after the presentation. So I'll collect those. Also, if there are some questions that need to be answered in the moment, I'll be fielding those as Todd goes through that. So again, to get this started, just by way of introduction, again, it's Todd Jansen, Global VP of Q Branch at Salesforce. A little bit of insight into Todd. Todd is proud to be celebrating his 16th year with Salesforce, where he serves as the Global Vice President of the Q Branch. And so what is Q Branch? I'm glad that you asked. You know that the scene in every 007 movie where James Bond goes to Q Branch for the latest intelligence, technology, and training to complete the mission. Todd runs the Q Branch for sales. It's where sales teams come for deal closing stories, prototypes, visionary demos, jaw-dropping presentations, and videos. Over the past decade at Salesforce, he had the privilege of building Q Branch from a napkin idea now to 10 unique teams and over 180 employees around the world. Todd is extremely passionate about the sales engineering profession and considers himself a lifer, and I can definitely advocate for him on that. He's an engineer to the core, both by education and profession. He loves working with diverse people, solving complex problems, and building things that scale. He's obsessed with efficiency. His brand is about trust, partnering for success, giving my best yes, and getting things done. Todd's values are competence, integrity, and impact. When he's not working, you can find him with his wife and 3 kids soaking up the outdoors and hitting the trails on a mountain bike. So I'm really excited to be handing this over to Todd. I've worked with Todd quite a bit, especially in the last 3 months. Everything that was said here in the overview is true, and he's good down to the core, and he has a lot of insight that I'm excited for him to share and that I think will help you guys. So without any more delay, I will now hand this over to Todd to take over so he can walk us through his presentation.
All right, make sure we can see this, Rex.
Yes, I can see it.
All right. Well, thank you for that intro, Rex. It's been awesome getting to know you as well. This year, we've been on quite an awesome journey, and I appreciate this forum to give back. Us in pre-sales have historically done a bad job of giving back to our community and helping each other out. So I've been doing quite a large amount of these presentations this year, and it just feels good to be connecting with other pre-sales leaders and professionals out in the industry. But I normally don't start my presentations with a big fat caveat, but I am today because this journey for me is relatively new. And so, some of these concepts I'm sharing with you today are things that I discovered even last week. And so it's really top of mind, but it is something I'm so passionate about right now, this concept of buyer enablement. I think once it clicks for you, it'll open up your mind in ways that you just haven't thought of before. And so just super passionate about this topic. But yeah, I'm right at the beginning of this journey. So, forgive me for some of the roughness of what I'm going to share with you. And also I got to give credit where credit's due. Look, everything I'm talking to you today is inspired by the book from Garen, Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder. I've got the copy right here. And like I said, it's been a learning journey. It's really opened up my mind to maybe what the future of pre-sales looks like. And so I'll get into that. In other words, we're going to look back on my presentation today, and only history will decide. Was this content, was it equivalent to the amphibious car that really never took off, or were we a bit ahead of our time, and was this kind of the next electric vehicle that changed the world? So I hope history is kind to this presentation, and we look back and it's not the amphibious vehicle, but that's to be decided. So for anyone that's heard me speak, I'm passionate about the pre-sales profession. I'm really passionate about helping people get a bigger seat at the sales table. And so you'll hear this from me consistently. We as SEs and SE leaders need to be more than the demo. There's nothing that makes my skin crawl more than being called the demo team or the demo people. Look, everyone knows this, including ourselves. We are some of the smartest people in the room. Like, we have capabilities and skills that are way beyond doing demos. And so, I'm always trying to push people to say, how can we be more of that? How can we add more value to the sales cycle? And if we're able to add more value to the sales cycle, we get a bigger seat at the table. And sometimes that's at an individual level, and sometimes that's at a leader level. And if you've seen me speak before, you might have seen me use this metaphor. So if nothing else, I'm consistent. Look, when I think about the pre-sales role or the SE role, there is a difference between a chef and a cook. This is my metaphor for SEs. At the basic level, they both do the same thing, but the difference is that one takes orders and the other one runs a business. And so I use this metaphor, and I think it works fairly well. These are kind of the two types of SEs and SE leaders that we run across in the industry. There are those that are just kind of the order takers, and yes, I'll do the demo, and when do you need me to show up? And then there's others that are like, hey, maybe demo's not the next move we make. Maybe we do some ROI calculations for them, and that would help them get over the buy hump. So, I think this is a good metaphor, and I'm gonna double down on it today because I'm gonna take it one step further. And it's been a very interesting year in tech, to say the least. And as I was thinking about my chef and cook metaphor, I really thought that there was a lot of takeaways that we in pre-sales could take away and learn from the restaurant business. So hang in there with me on this one. I'm going to try and make this point. So when you think about the restaurant business, what really changed? Well, the distribution changed. How you distributed food changed. So the option for in-person went away, right? And that would be kind of equivalent to on-site demos. So on-site demos, for the most part, unless you're in like particular industries like government or military where you have to be on site, pretty much went away this year, right? Online thrived. And when I mean online, I might equate that to like demo automation. What I'm not saying here is like, well, we can't do on-site demos. We're going to go do them over Zoom. Look, that's kind of a one-for-one trade, even though I know on-site demos are more impactful. But in the restaurant industry, online really thrived. And so if you had an app that people could quickly order food, you were ahead of the game and you were thriving. I'm not talking about like people calling up your restaurant and ordering food that way. That's really not automation. That's equivalent to us doing Zoom calls. And the other thing I'd say is the digital experience really began to matter for ordering food. And it was really that personalization. So look, you could order food from anywhere, but I will tell you, at least from my experience, there's this sandwich shop here in California called Mr. Pickles. And when me and my family are traveling, they make it 2 clicks to reorder our favorite sandwiches for the whole family. I just had lunch at Chipotle, similar type of experience. It was so easy to order from. And what we're seeing is that those businesses are thriving. Chipotle is thriving this year. They are having phenomenal earnings. Domino's Pizza is another one that was ahead of the curve. They had automation in place. And so, we look at the restaurant industry and we're like, oh, it's not great. No, there are businesses that are thriving right now. And so, in the next few slides, I'm going to start to make some of these connections to pre-sales. But, I think we need to do a similar shift, right? This idea that the only way we do a demo is either kind of one-to-one with us on a Zoom call or in the room. We need to start thinking differently. The second major thing is that expectations have changed, right? Over the last year, people have put a lot of value on convenience and value, right? They want it on their time, they want it packaged, they want it fast, right? We're certainly seeing that in the restaurant industry. And then, kind of this concept of gourmet was unappreciated. What I'm going to make a comparison here is what SEs do, what pre-sales consultants do, is we make 5-star meals, right? That is our passion. That is our profession. But I don't know if anyone's had this experience, but you've ordered food from a really expensive place, all to have it put in a to-go bag with ketchup packets and plastic silverware, and the fries are cold. And so what I'm really trying to say here is that doing custom demos all the time doesn't work, right? Putting all that heart and energy into every single demo is not sustainable, and it doesn't always translate. And so I want to be very careful here, because someone could be looking and listening to me right now saying, oh, Todd's just preaching we got to go full automation. I am not. What I'm saying is there's a right place, a right customer, and a right time for customized 5-star demos. But for all the other demos, kind of early on the sales cycle, we need to take a page from the restaurant industry and focus on convenience and value and that personalization. Okay, so hopefully you stayed with me through that. That was a lot, but hopefully it's a good metaphor and you can see some of the similarities here. And if not, I'm basically the amphibious vehicle. So look, how do we start to change the pre-sales distribution and expectation problem? And I'm going to talk to you about that, but I'm also going to say that it's much bigger than that. And so hang with me because it's going to get exciting. Okay, so how do we fix the distribution problem like the restaurants had to do, right? Well, automation, that is a clear way to fix distribution, right? We can record demos, we can work with marketing to send out emails and marketing journeys. I'd say the only challenge there is it's marketing, so they're going to want a certain type of video and demo. We can make it easy for salespeople, AEs, SDRs, BDRs to send out these videos in email. We could set up microsites where we put all of our video demo videos on one page, and that would be a way to automate. Okay, the challenge with that, and hopefully a lot of people in this call are going, yeah, Todd, we've already done that, and that's good. But I would say automation is just part of it, because everyone's automating. Everyone's doing what I just described to some degree. And it's sometimes helpful and sometimes not. And so the next really key component is personalization. And this has really been accelerated this year. A buyer today doesn't want to be sent to a video site with 20 videos on it for them to decide what they should watch. They want to be prescribed to. And Rex and I were talking about this week. It's like, this is the reason why you go to a fancy restaurant, is because you go there and you say, tell me what's good. I like these things. Tell me what I should eat, right? That is very true of the consumer and the buyer today. They want to be prescribed to. And the other thing that's, it's not unique, but it's been accelerated this year, is they want to watch things on their time. And I'll give you a great example. I hung up my last call at 5:30 yesterday, all to realize that I had an hour and a half conference with the school where they're going to talk about all the good stuff the kids were doing. And I just didn't have it in me, right? That meant, I got to make dinner, maybe eat dinner, and then stay on until 8 o'clock. And I just don't have it. And so, I think a lot of us are probably feeling that way. We're fatigued at the end of the day from being on camera all day. And so are all of our buyers and consumers. They want it concise, to the point, and they want to watch it on their time. And so the good news is, if you're looking for a solution that crushes both automation and personalization, Consensus is your tool, right? It's the same tool in one, and it does a phenomenal job of those two things. You don't really, there's really no questions there, and this has been my experience. But it's actually bigger than automation and personalization. There's one more pillar to this puzzle. And the last pillar is anticipating your buyer's needs before they do. And if you take these three things into account, automation, personalization, and anticipating your buyer's needs before they do, that is what Consensus calls buyer enablement. So those are the three pillars. And so the good news, again, Consensus crushes those two buckets for us, right? There's nothing I have to do to kind of make that happen other than deploy that solution within my company. Unfortunately, this last pillar is really on us, right? So how do we begin to think about what our buyers' needs and when in the sales cycle? So this is on us. This is on me. And so that's really what I'm going to be talking about for the next several minutes here. But before I could get there, I really need to kind of explain what buyer enablement was and what the three pillars are. And hopefully you saw why that's important. And look, we're seeing it happen with the restaurant industry, right? And I think we need to take a page out of that book and bring it over here to pre-sales. And so, again, these are my thoughts, and again, they're relatively new. So, hang in there with me. But my first thought is that enablement probably needs to evolve. And so I have so many good friends and acquaintances that are in either sales enablement or pre-sales enablement. And I will just say that they do God's work, and it is a critical role, and it is never going to go away. And they are always understaffed and never get the credit they deserve. And it's a really, really hard job. And because so much of what I do with my organization is so similar to enablement, I can say this. I feel this on a weekly basis. Enablement is often hard to measure, right? What is the impact we had as an enabling team? It's often very, very hard to impact. And this is one that's very near and dear to my heart, and it's painful, is that often we're seen as a cost center, right? We're not necessarily in the same category of AEs and SEs. And so I think about sales enablement and pre-sales enablement. And then I think about this stat from Gartner. And Gartner says that 83% of the sale happens without the AE. I'm gonna say it again in case you were multitasking. 83% of the sale happens without the AE. Okay. So what we're saying here is that the AE is actually responsible for 17% of the sale closing. And there's all these things happening underneath the surface of the ocean that is the 83%. And so really simple question on this is like, well, who's enabling the 83% to happen, right? Who's focused on that 83%? And so when I talk about this concept of buyer enablement, well, we've got sales people enablement, we've got pre-sales people enablement. That's focused on the 17%. Buyer enablement is focused on the 83%. We probably should get that started. And you only have to believe half of me, right? But 83%, that's a pretty big number. The second thing I found and that I truly believe is that really good content matters. And so what I've seen is that recording demos and recording video is a unique skill. And there's certain really, really good at it. And so my advice would be to either find someone in your organization or possibly go hire someone who's really amazing at it. And these videos are very different than what marketing would put on your website. These videos have to be genuine. You have to hire someone that's a product expert. So they have to be a product expert first and then good at video second. And that's because you want these videos to be credible and come off genuine. And the reason for that is that, video view time is historically pretty low, right? If it's a marketing video, that's somewhere around 45 seconds. Consensus sees on average view time around 4.5 minutes. And so really why you want good, genuine content is it will be the difference between someone watching seconds of your video and 4.5 minutes plus. Rex, you and I were talking about this the other day. People are always asking, well, what is good content? What does good look like? And I'll just say from experience, of course, I'm starting to screenshot here with all these cameras on Iman here. The best content that I've seen work for us is the content that's not hyper polished. It's an SE talking about the product, not using all the marketing terms. And I'll just say this right now. If you want to see the type of content we're producing at Salesforce, go Google search Iman's webinars. Iman is spelled I-M-A-N. Google search Iman's webinars, and you can see where he's put up recordings of his webinars, and we're essentially chopping those up and putting them into consensus videos. And so you can kind of get his style. But if you listen to Iman, he's stripping out all the marketing jargon and just speaking in kind of normal terms to people. And that's what people want. They don't want the commercial. They want an expert telling them how this stuff actually works. And Rex, feel free to chime in if you think I missed anything on that.
No, I think that's great. I think a lot of people do ask that question around how should the content be built. And so I did add that link to Iman's page in the chat. But yeah, we've seen authenticity will always beat out hyper polished, especially when you're already engaged in a sales cycle.
Yeah. And, here's what I'd say about Iman. And I've worked with Iman for a really long time. He's kind of more radio personality than just an SE recording demos. And that is very deliberate, right? He has an amazing following with our customer base. He's a distinguished SE. You're not going to find a bigger product expert. And so we're building a community around him, and it's very, very deliberate.
Hey, Todd, someone did ask if you have a quick minute, is the video creator a full-time position?
So, that's really going to depend on how big your company is. I think it is, or you at least have to carve out half of their time to do it. I think, when someone's kind of like, do this in your spare time job, you're really going to you're not going to be able to produce video at the speed and pace you want to. And so that's the thing is we've kind of made this part of Iman's job, and there's new videos showing up every single week. And I think you're going to want that kind of cadence. Really good question. It doesn't have to start that way though, I would say, right? Like find that person that's good at it, start there, and then see what it evolves to.
Yeah, great. One thing I would also add to that, Todd, is sometimes people overthink the process. Get started with one, and eventually it can grow into something that's massive. So sometimes people start from the opposite end where they want full scale. Others, people just want their first automated demo or their first video. I would just say, just get started. Sometimes it can take as little as 30 minutes to get a couple videos put together, and then you can build from there. So don't think that perfection is the first step in video creation.
Yeah, perfection is going to be your enemy. And I will say this, and we get this at Salesforce too, is someone from marketing goes, "Whoa, what are these videos? What are you guys doing?" And I've been very clear from the beginning of, Consensus is a sales tool. We are working on progressing things through the sales pipeline. And we are getting scale out of our solution engineers with this tool. And that usually does a pretty good job because it's like, yeah, marketing, you're responsible for getting the lead in the door in the videos that do that. Once that happens, we take it from there. So don't be surprised if someone from marketing pulls you aside and goes, what are these videos? What are you guys doing? And I think you just need to like hold your ground and say, look, this is about sales and moving it through the pipe. So, this is also from the book. And if you guys have been around Consensus for any point of time, you would have definitely seen this. But buyer enablement is really this concept of selling in the gaps. And I'm going to be completely honest. Rex sent me this pretty early on in our relationship, and I got it. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's pretty easy to get, but I didn't really get it. And so, when I think about buyer enablement and anticipating the customer's needs, the simplest way I could put it, and a different way of saying what is selling in the gaps, it's what are you sending in between every meeting? And you should probably have something to send. And so what I like about this is all of a sudden you go from this concept of like, oh, Consensus is just about demos and demo videos and, that's it. No, this is about, having a video for pricing. This is about having a video for customer success stories. This is about a video that's walking someone through an ROI calculation, right? It can be used for everything. I mean, you should be using it to walk someone through the contract you just gave them to see who that's been passed around to. So, I love this concept. Once it finally clicked for me, is like, what are you sending in between meetings? And this all of a sudden becomes really, really exciting. And so, kind of this is where I'm at, and this is the journey ahead, and this is what I am so excited about. And the reason why this slide is so blank is because I'm at step 1 in this process. But what I'm excited to do is start to look at the different segments we sell to and start to map out buyer journey. What are the personas that come into the picture and when, and what material do they need to get educated and become a champion or the buyer? And so, I'm really excited to start with maybe our smaller segments and try and map out like, man, maybe the average sales cycle is 35 days. I'm just making this up. Who are the people we typically meet in those 35 days? What does the typical process look like? When does IT come into the picture? When does the founder come into the picture? When does legal come into the picture? And starting to map out that journey, and then working backwards to map content to, again, sell in the gaps. Actually, let me back up before I go any further. A point I wanted to make here was, when you're sending content in between meetings, one of 3 things is going to happen. First thing being, customer doesn't watch it. Well, that's fine. Maybe you don't have the meeting. Maybe you still do. Customer watches it. Well, great. Customer prospect. They're going to show up to the meeting so much more prepared. It's going to be a better conversation. Third thing that might happen is not only do they watch it, but they send it to other people in the organization and they show up to the call. And now we're condensing the sales cycle, right? Which is great. And so that's why I think it's really important to be thinking about this and having things to send in between meetings, because it's going to speed up your sales cycle, or it's going to expose more people to you in the buying process. Okay, so like I was saying, I'm excited to start to look at different segments, but you can't just look at segments. You need to actually start looking at industries. You need to do the same mapping by industries, by solution, right? This is going to vary in different countries as well. And of course, in all 4 of those examples, there's different personas that we're selling to. And so when I look at this, it's a bit overwhelming because this is a lifetime's worth of work to start to go down this path. It's either a lifetime's worth of work or an army's worth of work. And I think this is where I am really excited to focus some of my time in the next year is mapping this out and figuring out what content we need to sell in the gaps for every single one of these. So with that, Rex, that's what I had today. I think the last thing I would say is that there is some great material in the book. Selling is hard, buying is harder. in the appendix around ways to get started on mapping those journeys and figuring out what content you need to make. I just didn't want to really end on like some tactical spreadsheets, but there's some great materials in there.
Well, thank you, Todd. This has been really great. I heard a little bit when we went through the dry run on this, but I learned again going through it again and took some good notes. We did have a question that was brought up that you did answer. Feel free, if you guys do have questions, start asking those now, and it looks like we do. So Todd, a question that came up was, for new users, what types of videos would you create first?
For new users, I'm assuming new customers. Rex, how are you reading that?
That's how I'm using it. If you were a new user of Consensus, what would you start building first in terms of video content?
Got it. I'll speak from experience. We've seen a lot of popularity with kind of this concept of overview videos. And I'll speak to you a little bit in Salesforce language, so forgive me. Salesforce, we have cloud. So we have our sales cloud, we have our service cloud, we have our marketing cloud. And so, this concept of a sales cloud overview, that's kind of like 10,000 feet, just talking about some of the high level benefits of how it works. Those are some of our most popular. I think it really depends who's sending the email to the customer as well. And so if you think about those SDRs, BDRs, first, second touch that prospect or customer is having, those overviews are going to be perfect for those groups. AEs are probably going to want to send a little more in depth. And so for them, you might start to think about kind of at the SKU level or the feature level. And one thing I often advise people on is you have to untrain your SE mind a bit to make these videos, because we've all been trained. You do discovery, you tell stories, you use personas in your demo stories, right? Like, you never do a generic demo. Well, guess what? These are kind of generic demos. But you also have to keep in mind that someone that's never seen your product before, they just kind of need to see it to check if they think it's even in contention to work for them. And so don't get hung up that we're trying to replace the demos your SEs do with Consensus. That would be the total wrong approach. I think like really simple Lego bricks is how I think about them.
Perfect. Two more questions came up. First one, how do you track ROI in the short-term implementation or leading indicators?
That's great. Look, it's going to depend on what CRM you use, but I think you need to figure out a way to tag opportunities with Consensus. So if someone is using Consensus on an opportunity, you need to figure out a way to tag that, whether it's a checkbox on the opportunity, a field on the opportunity, an activity. You have to establish that right from the beginning. Because if you don't, Consensus gives you great metrics in their tool, awesome metrics. But when you want to see, is this speeding up opportunity stages? Is it increasing close rates? You're going to need to have that tag back in your CRM.
Perfect. The next question is, what's the big outcome that you want from demo automation and buyer enablement 1 to 3 years from now?
Oh, such a good question.
A very good question.
Look, I think short term is I want to free up our SEs to do what they do best. I want our SEs to be that chef, right? To make that amazing customized meal demo, right? And that's really where my passion's at, and why I brought Consensus into the company was I want to save these folks some time. And so that's, I think, the early one. 3 years from now, I hope it's shortening our sales cycles. I hope, it leads to much more educated customers in the buying cycle, which ultimately leads to happier customers long term. I think we also need to expand this to post-sale, right? I've only talked about pre-sale today, but there's huge post-sale implications here. And I think it's and this is ambitious, but I hope that it changes the way we sell. And I say that not just for me. I hope the whole industry of sales changes. and this is in the book, and Rex, you and I have talked about this a lot. You know, in the world of buyer enablement, you kind of take that shirt off that says I close big deals, and you put on the shirt that says coach. And when you talk to salespeople, you know, I think a lot of them would rather be regarded as that coach. Like, I helped coach my buyer along and gave them all the right information at all the right stages for a smooth transaction, a happy transaction, than, you know, than the alternative. And so I think that feels better for everyone. And man, if we got there, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I like the coach analogy. They're both on the same team. They win and lose together. And so, yeah, love that. Two more questions. We'll try to get knocked out here. The next is, have you tested out the ROI or contract overview demo yet? So I guess, you know, have you tested out the ROI, and have you seen any results so far?
We haven't made any ROI videos yet. And I'm going to make an assumption. I understand the question. I'm going to answer it first, then maybe clarify. We haven't done any of that yet. We haven't done any contract demos yet, but Rex is actually really good at sending over contract demos, and they do go viral, and your bosses do watch them, and people higher up in the food chain watch them. So I would use that as a very successful proof point.
It's funny. Sometimes I can send 10 different demos that will never be watched by an executive, but if pricing is attached to it, they open it. So that's a good point. So another one here is, what is the single most important thing you've done to get people behind demo automation and buyer enablement? And what was the resistance?
The single most important thing you have to do up front is you need sales leader buy-in. It doesn't mean you have to get buy-in at the top, right? We piloted with a lot of different teams. So really what I needed was a pre-sales leader that was passionate about it. They would partner with their sales AVP or RVP, and there was buy-in and commitment to do this. And why that's important is, as much as I thought pre-sales people or SEs would be the power senders of these videos to customers, what I found is they're not. They certainly do send them, but it's the AEs and SDRs and BDRs that are having a lot of customer transactions in a day. And so they are the power senders. And so if you don't have that sales leader buy-in, you do the training, they see the tool, they maybe use it for the first week. And if there's no one saying, hey, try and send 20 this week, this will pay off for you. You kind of need that cadence. And so that, I think, is the most important thing. And that was a good lesson learned. Not that we hit any stumbling blocks, but the teams that are really successful in the pilot, sales leaders were behind it. When they saw a dip in things being sent out, they got right on their people. They offered some spiffs. And, you know, look, sales to some degree is a volume game. And as I've been telling people, you got to stuff the top of that funnel. And especially in 2020, you got to stuff the top of that funnel. And Consensus is definitely a way to do that.
Okay, well, we have three more, and we only have time for one. So I kind of sorted through it, but the question of, how was your seat at the table changed due to driving buyer enablement?
So I'm just beginning kind of the buyer enablement department, if you will. I'm going to make a joke here. It's like, you know, a handful of people, a dog and a parakeet. And I'm totally bootstrapping it. I called up one of my employees a month ago and just said, hey, congratulations, you're part of the buyer enablement team. He had no idea what I was talking about. But I was basically marking a date in the sand on which we started it. I will say this, like, I normally would not be in conversations with our COO at Salesforce. And not only did that individual sign off on our pilot, they signed off on something much bigger. And so that, I think, is kind of the seat at the table that I never anticipated having, that has been pretty phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Todd. We appreciate those who asked the question, Todd, for the time that you put into this. We've always enjoyed working with you and appreciate the industry knowledge that you bring to the table. So as we start wrapping this up, I want to quickly remind you guys that this is a 2-day event. Tomorrow, we're starting off at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, where we're going to go over product and integration roadmap overview with Brian Zurcher and Garen Hess. And then we also have on track 2, Miles Taylor, who will be going over Consensus Snap, becoming a power user of Consensus Snap, which is my favorite tool to use. I use it all the time. It is phenomenal. So please be there. Make sure you check your emails to see the links and the latest updates for tomorrow. But we thank everybody for coming on. Todd, again, thank you for joining. It's a very good working with you in these webinars and as a partner. Any other last things you want to say before we close off?
No, just thanks for the time. Happy to connect with any of you on LinkedIn. Let's stay close on this. I mean, this is a journey that, is just starting. And I think this is definitely in the wheelhouse of pre-sales, and I think we need to shape it.
Thank you, Todd. And thank you, everybody. We will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.